Welcome to the SuperStar Communicator podcast of your hosts, Nick Simon and Susan Heaton-Wright. We're here to create intrigue and interest about spoken communication to empower you to speak and communicate with confidence, clarity, and credibility in all of your business conversations. We interview expert guests from all over the world. Listen twice a month to be inspired to be a superstar communicator.
Hello, everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to have my co-host here in the studio with me. Isn't that brilliant? We don't have lots of different screens. And I'm even more excited to introduce Mike Pagan. Now, Mike and I have something really in common with each other, which is that we were both born in Birmingham in the United Kingdom. So by rights, we are both yummy brummies. Now, that's not the reason why I've asked Mike to come on this podcast. It's because Mike specializes in mental wealth or mental health, particularly for men. And we are celebrating International Men's Day. Mike is the mental wealth strategist who helps clients achieve positive mental wealth through building hand-picked support networks and helping them unlock significant performance improvements. Mike believes isolation kills creativity and prevents decisions making, which in turn can have a detrimental effect on both an individual's and the company's level of success. Working alone can lead to introspection, procrastination, and faffing. We know all about that. About increasing the risk of a failure to deliver. This is interesting stuff, Mike. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So why in particular are you interested in men's mental health and well-being?
Well, ever since I was born, I've always been male, so hence I've got that sort of slight bias towards it. That's kind of where. But joking aside, no, it's an area where men generally, historically, however you want to dress it up, are rubbish at asking for help. So having a day where we are focused very much on getting men to put your hands up, ask for help. Be okay with being vulnerable. Be okay with not being perfect. We need to put frameworks in place where that is allowed, where that is acceptable, and that's why it's so important. So yeah, that's what buzzes me on it. And actually, you got me straight into a story, but a very quick one. My father-in-law was around recently, and he is sort of mid 80s. Brought up in the stiff upper lip, just get on with it. And the debate that was going on, and it was one of my daughters was there and turned around to me after and said, how come you just didn't start throwing your toys at the pram, because he was disrespecting all of your work virtually. I said, that's because he's not open. He's not there. It's old school. That's the way it was. It doesn't get the way things are nowadays. But that's the point. When we have good people around us, we make better decisions. We have a lot more fun along the way. But that only comes by us asking for help and putting hands up more of the time.
And do you think that actually having the right people around is key to this? Because if, say, your father-in-law respectfully was in your team with that closed mindset, could that be a negative and it could drain your energy?
Absolutely. Because the good old sea anchor, they're the ones that drag out the back of the boat. They don't actually stop you, but they just prevent you from going at any pace. And we need to proactively, intentionally choose the support network around us. And the other element with that is, firstly, understanding who's in that support network and are they fit for purpose or not. And secondly, have we outgrown? Have we evolved? Are we transitioning? In which case, we need to let certain people go. Now, that doesn't mean to say dump friends. I'm not that cruel. But there are certain people that are no longer fit for purpose in that role. So they can still be great friends at the pub, at the sports facility, or whatever it is you do. But then as far as sort of having your back and coming up with clear, honest, undivided challenge, provocation, all of those wonderful adjectives, then we need to go for the 2.0 or even the 3.0. So we've got good people around us that have truly got our back for all the right reasons and will get us challenged and provoked rather than just draining our energy, as you say.
So, Nick, you're obviously from a different generation. How do you perceive your network?
I think it's different in some ways. I think coming straight out of a master's degree, I've worked with a lot of like-minded people who are driven in the same kind of sense. So I'm guessing by what you mean by surrounding yourself with individuals that help you, is that from a similar point of view of interest and career interest and that kind of thing, as well as, you know, friends from different social areas.
Yeah, it's that part of understanding that you transitioning, whether you're sort of going from school to college to uni, or apprenticeship to first property, first job, all of those things. We constantly transition and evolve. And there's people through our lives. My late mother-in-law always referred to friends are there for a season, a reason, and for life. It's not her language, but she was the person who said it to me when I actually heard it. Which again is something that we're all very good at, being told things 1,000 times, but then suddenly one person says it and it makes sense. And this is the thing, these are friendships and that will change and evolve because we're part of the same sports team, we're at the same university, we're at the same company. But then as soon as you move, then those friendships, some of them just end because they were fit for that period of time. I lived overseas for a number of years, and when we announced in the location we were living in that we were moving back to the UK, sort of 3-5 months later or whatever it was, there were certain people who just dropped us like a hot potato. And it sort of sounds really brutal and rude, but they didn't see us as in their lives for the future, so they moved on. And it's sort of, well, that's not fair, but this is where life is at, and we need to make sure we've got good people around us that are more than friendships as well, because this is where friends in a sports environment, in a uni, in a work, whatever it is, will ask certain things, but at no point until we give them permission will they dig deeper and allow us and enable us to be truly vulnerable, truly open, truly honest, and truly mentally naked in those discussions. And that's up to us to give people permission to do that. And that takes development, that takes bravery, that takes openness, honesty, whatever you call it. And that's an area where a lot of people need help.
So how would you help people on that side?
Well, starting marker is always knowing who you've got in your support network already, and understanding have I got people who've truly got my back, or are they just friendships? Because I know I've got some great friends even one of my best mates, but I would never talk about financial vulnerability with them. I would never talk about certain topics with them because that's not where that friendship is. It's a different environment. Whereas I know some other people that I've recruited over the years are evil. Well, they're not evil because they do it all with love, but they don't let me off the hook, which is kind of, okay, that's where it works. So first thing to do is understand who is in our support network. And that varies from people, finance, work, other environments outside of sport and so on. But it's knowing those individuals and how committed to you are they? Because that's the key part. If you don't turn up for 2 months because you broke your leg and you can't play the sport, and they don't pick up the phone, well, they're not part of your support network. You go to children's christenings, a wedding, whatever the party is, but yeah, I'm still not quite comfortable to be that open with them. Well, okay, they're great. They're good friends. They're there for a long time, but they're not the ones who in your inner sanctum. And a lot of the time, people spend so much time giving that they neglect themselves and realize that actually, who's really got my back?
Great. And what is mental wealth?
Oh, mental wealth. It's an education piece, because people automatically think I've just spelt mental health wrong. But no, mental wealth is the investment side to mental health. So mental health is where we are on the spectrum, positive, negative, everything in between. But mental wealth is when we proactively invest in the people that support us, where we look after ourselves proactively. And it's something, self-care is a phrase that's used so much around the words of well-being and everything else. But generally, we're not very good at it because being a male, I've a father of 3, wife and a dog. I was always number 6 in my household, in my head. I was never number 1. I was always number 6. And that's the reality, because I've got to be there for everybody else. Well, yeah, but if I'm not fit for purpose, I can't help, support or fix, if I needed to, other people's challenges in that family network, let alone the work environment. And so when we proactively invest in ourselves, you can see behind me sort of strange random photography of me swimming. That's part of my self-care team. That's part of my well-being. I can't do meditation and mindfulness. I just don't sit still for long enough. I can't do it cross-legged either. Or Kumbaya, it's never a good song. But the flip side is I've always done active mindfulness, active meditation, be that through sort of playing rugby to a serious level for many years, or now where I'm in a lake or a river or a sea, and it's just stroke after stroke after stroke. I've done it for over 10 years now, and I know it's part of your world,
yes.
But I've never gotten out of the water feeling worse than I did when I got in. And it might be colder, might be sometimes a little bit icky because the water was dirty or something like that, but I always get out feeling better than I did before I got in. And on top of that, you've then, because your brain then just gets into a flow and relaxation. That's where there's an old speaker friend of mine who would refer to them as cosmic faxes. I know it dates him a little bit more than me, but you just get these pearls just popping into your head whilst you're swimming along.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when you're swimming, you can't write them down. So you just have to sort of replay them in your head to remember. But that's part of the self-care. And that is investing in your mental health, which gives you mental wealth. So it's the yin to the yang.
I just wanted to pick up one thing about your support network. You have a father. This is completely respectful. You have a father-in-law who was from a different era, and my late father again was from a different era. And there were a couple of situations earlier on in my career when my father basically said, just get a proper job, or just grin and bear it. When it ring, there are bells that are wrong. And because he was my dad and I loved him, I believed him. Whereas looking back, that really was not the best advice.
I'll give you a classic example of this, which relates to fathers and father-in-laws, because it was both. So one of the bits of advice by the strong alpha males in my life have always said, never work with family and friends. It's a well-known statement. It's what everybody's always said, because when it goes wrong, it's ugly. All right. So that's the precursor for not doing it. Whereas my father-in-law, all of his finances, all of his legal has been run by his best mates organization. So his best mates company has done that for him for 50 years. My father, all of his finances and all of his legal and everything else was run by my grandfather's legal practice, which was then run by my uncle when he took over the family firm many, many years ago. So the two alpha males in my life telling you don't do business with friends and family, both did business with friends and family and got on with it. So just because they have an opinion that says, oh, well, you shouldn't do it like that, you should do it like this, doesn't mean to say actually they're taking any of their own advice. Because unless somebody truly understands where you're trying to get to, be that legal, financial, wealth, or whatever it is, then how can anybody ever actually call you out and say, Mike, excuse me being blunt, but that's a bit of a dick move. Don't think you should do it. And had I had that proactive team in the mid noughties, some of my property investing errors that I made would never have happened, because somebody would have been there calling me out saying that's not the right move. And I'd have taken independent legal advice, and there's a whole plethora of stories around both positive and negative. But that's what we need. We need good people around us. So the generation above us, yeah, the world of speaking, coaching, communication, support, but you're selling hot air, and we sold bricks and mortar. We banged metal. We did whatever it was. Don't get that. That's fine. But if it makes a living and it keeps your grandchildren enjoying what's going on, well, then don't give me a hard time for it.
What's your opinion on that, Nick? Oh, you've got some questions.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. I think also that in the modern age, there's the kind of effects social media has, and how do you think social media and the internet affects those mental health and those social networks?
I don't want to sound like a grumpy old grey-haired man here.
Oh, go on.
I've got to be careful, but there is a real reality point in here. And the classic example I give you is when when my middle daughter was around about 14, 15 years old, and she was having all those challenges that young teenagers do at school, of friends doing this and friends not doing that, whatever else. And then her best mate, she introduced them to some of her other friends because she'd changed schools. And within about 2 months, suddenly she's seeing through Snap Maps and all the other equivalents that her best mate was out with all of her other friends at a party and she wasn't invited. And suddenly you've got that massive thing of FOMO, which is that good old fear of missing out for those of us above the age of whatever that don't understand it. That has just put so much pressure on. And it's this whole thing about excessive vacuous noise that just gets in the way versus sharing quality content and having conversations. We need to talk more. We need to have open, honest conversations, but we need to do it in a safe environment. There are people who write their whole life story in diaries on social media that others follow and get excited by. It's not my world, but that's how it works there. And the other environment, which is using it for the good. And there's a lot of good that can be done with it. There's a lot of protest, there's a lot of challenge against political that can be done on there. But it's one of those areas of again, it's going to sound like grumpy old man syndrome, but it's that echo chamber of the algorithms where, okay, because you clicked on X, that means you're going to get fed lots of information that reinforces it, and it's everything from the unconscious bias and all the other challenges that go around that. It must be true because I've seen it 47 times. But if you only mix with that one segment of the population in that one environment, you're never going to hear the rest of it. And so social media, there's too much out there, which causes the pressure, which then causes the FOMO and all the equivalents around that, which then pushes people into situations where they don't need to. I'm a firm believer of my phone is charged by the front door. And not every night, but that's where it gets left. It never goes upstairs in the house. I never have it in the bedroom. I've got a watch that's clever enough to wake me up in the morning. You need to create environments where we have space, and pressing that pause button, pressing the digital detox button. Go and climb a mountain. You cannot take messages when you're swimming in a lake. Enough said, really.
Furthering on from that, how do you think going into the kind of conversation about isolation, how do you think that social media and the new technology can cause isolation with that, as you said?
The isolation piece, I believe, is actually getting worse. So even though we now know, having had several years of COVID lockdowns and everything else, what true isolation is when you're cut off and you can't go anywhere. The flip side of it is we've now got hybrid working in the working space, which in the main I think is very good. However, it's got to be balanced. And And the classic example, one of my, again, I quite often use my children as an analogy here, but that's only because they're young adults going into the working world. And I am worried for Gen Z and millennials, because hybrid working, when you are working in an organization, 3 and 2, 2 and 3, you're working from a student house. My daughter was on placement year. She had, if she didn't move her mouse for 16 minutes, then it automatically logged her off on the system, which triggered to her boss that she wasn't at work. Yeah. She's doing mechanical engineering and robotics as a degree. So she built a robot that moved her mouse every 14 minutes, so she never logged off. And you just, okay, whilst it's a humorous story, it's incredibly sad. And how are you meant to learn? Because if you're sitting in your parents' spare room, fluffy slippers on, cat on the bed next to you, laptop open, Netflix on in the background, mum popping in every 20 minutes saying, do you want another cup of tea, love? Yeah, that is not a professional mindset. You're not going to learn via osmosis from somebody else. So this whole balance has to be there, because that's unintentional isolation. And that is growing. Team building events have to come back in more effectively in companies. Gone are the sort of the 90s stigma of let's go paintballing, and that's the only thing that team building is. But it's that equivalent. We have to learn how to communicate. We have to learn what pushes somebody's buttons and what motivates somebody else. Well, if you're not seeing each other day in, day out, which you don't anymore, then we have to manifest environments where that can happen.
But there are many organisations that are struggling to get their employees back in the office, or there are employees that you know that when there are vacancies, they don't want to take the roles if they are full-time back in the office.
Which is why I think hybrid will be the way it will go forward and will stay. There are certain organisations where clearly it can't be; it has to be in situ, and there's others where you're a gaming code writer, and you prefer to be sat in your dungeon programming away. So this will vary by industries, but the going forward, I think hybrid will stay. We just have to have better managers. So we need to invest in the management so the leadership has greater empowerment and trust of the people they're working with. If it's all done through a negative lens,
yes,
it's just saying, I don't trust any of you, you're all taking the mickey. Well, nobody's going to enjoy that. Nobody's going to stick around. And that's one of the big pictures. You get the whole discussions around corporate social responsibility and what that means. A lot of my focus is on human social responsibility. So HSR. So if we have a responsibility as leaders, employees, owners to look after our staff and find out what motivates them, and help them be motivated, help them have fun, help them outside of the work have fun, etc. Because that way we'll get more out of them and they're going to stick around, which is kind of important because it's hard to find good staff.
So if I approached you as a leader of an organization that worked hybridly, which 3 tips would you give me, or would you suggest to me that you would come in and help the managers with?
Okay. Initially, we have to sort of create safe spaces. So I'm a big firm believer in peer support groups. So if you've got multiple silos, then you get different people from different silos, but then it's like the special projects environment, but special projects historically was, that's because they're going to make you redundant soon. Now, I'm not referring to that sort of special projects. This is where you've got people, they're working together, they're going through training programs, they're supporting each other, but they've also got the confidentiality code between them, where they can be open, honest, and vulnerable and ask those real questions. I will always advocate coaching, because I know full well coaches will unlock and see self-sabotage patterns and tendencies that individuals have. And they won't confess that to a line manager.
No.
Because that's then going to be used against them at a future point in time for salary reviews, promotions, and whatever else. So there has to be independent coaching. That makes such a difference. And the final other area there is on self-care. What are we going to do in those organizations to actually promote people looking after themselves better and more effectively? Is there more things that can be done within the community to help the community, be that the employee community or the community geographically around the corner? Because that gets people more invested. They get, and there are many companies that do this brilliantly. And there's others that haven't got a clue about it because they're too focused on just trying to get enough cash flow in to pay the staff next month and everything in between. And we're in a challenging marketplace at the moment, which does actually put a serious reality around the fact that cost of living, cost of parts, cost of everything has gone up. So that means margins have changed. In many cases, they've shrunk.
And what's your opinion on self-help books?
Self-help books. On my desk, I've got an original jotter pad of The Secret from about 15 years ago. And it's never been jotted on. It's still sitting there gathering dust. And I don't tell you that from a sense of pride. It's self-help books are brilliant if you take action as a result of them. I'm a coach of mine many years ago. When are you going to stop learning and start acting on the stuff you've learned? So this is where self-help books are great, because I've written several books myself. So they're good for getting people stimulated, but to stick at it, to take action and to carry on forward, either we need to be as individuals hugely self-disciplined and motivated to do it, or we need to give permission to somebody else to call us out. And that goes back to the peer support and the coaching, because those elements keep you on track for the longer period. Because there's no one book that will make you $1 million tomorrow. There's no one online course that will change that whole. The blue pills don't exist. It's that whole process of we need to be focused on the long-term support. The long-term engagement changes the way we work.
So what are your 3 top tips to share with the audience, given that this is about International Men's Day?
Okay. Men are brilliant at hiding their feelings in many cases and not asking for help and support. So the question there is, who, as a male, so directed to the males watching this, listening to this, who are the people that you can actually be vulnerable with? Have you asked them to be truly open and honest with you? Have you given them permission to say things that maybe you don't really want to be said by a boss, by a partner, by a wife, a girlfriend, whatever it is? Have you got those people? If not, where are you going to find them from? And so this is about proactively, intentionally recruiting those. In the world of self-care, we have to be number one. None of this macho nonsense of everybody else comes first. I'm going to put on. We've got to be looking after number one, so that when and if the wheels come off, we are fit for purpose to help other people going forward. And so that's not number 6 in the household. It's number 1 for you. And that means we're being selfish. And selfish is a word that people, ever since we were little, don't be selfish, Michael in those days, share your toys. Well, no, this is about being selfish. If you need to go and do X or Y that's going to reboot you, rebalance you, refocus you, then do it. Yeah, as long as it's legal and it's not going to have any negative impact on other people, follow those government health lines. But do the stuff that gets you. If that happens to be gardening for 15 hours over a weekend, if that happens to be playing a sport, if that whatever it is, the weirder it is, if it works for you, do it. Yeah, that really. And the final top tip or final challenge is, and this is for everybody listening, male and female alike, whatever the format. If there is somebody that you haven't spoken to, that in your gut feel, you just need to reach out to and have a conversation. 2 years ago, when my son was in his final year at school, one of his great friends, fortunately, was unsuccessful in a suicide attempt. The morning afterwards, I got a phone call from my friend, one of my best mates, who lives in New Jersey in the States. And I said, before we chat, Bob, just tell me, why have you rung me now? Why have you picked up the phone at this point today? And he's just, that's a kind of a weird way to answer the phone. He said, no, there's reasons behind it. I need to know why. And we chatted for about 5 minutes and found no other reason apart from his gut feel said it was time to ring. The reason why I tell you that story is because Bock is the head of A&E at a hospital in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And I was able to tell him everything this young man had done the night before. And he was able to give me honest and real insights as to what was going to be happening for the next 72 hours. That I then gave to my son, who then gave to his friend's twin sister, who also in turn gave it to their parents. Bock rang me at 4 a.m. in the morning, US time. He was driving home from being at work, doing a night shift, and he just thought, I haven't spoken to Mike, I'm going to ring. So my challenge to people watching this and listening to this is, if your gut feel is saying, I haven't spoken to Bob, Claire, whatever, pick up the phone. Don't tweet them, don't text them, don't high-five them, don't do something on social media. Pick up the phone. Better still, if they geographically will allow you, go and see them. Because you do not know what is going on in somebody else's world. You do not know what the situation is. And for those males who are very, very good at hiding it, people can't see the pain and hurt and everything else that's going on with you. So we need to just step up, call up and take action, because that will potentially change a life or even save a life, which is what we need to be doing more of.
Brilliant. Do you have any other thoughts about that, Nick?
I don't think so.
So before we finish, how can people get in touch with you? And I know that you've got a couple of books that you've written as well.
Oh, yep, yes. The simplest one is MikePagan.com. If you look up MichaelPagan.com, he's a surfer in Hawaii. So quite occasionally I get all sorts of other stuff through for him. So it's a different one. So MikePagan.com. There's several books up there, but my original book was all about faffing about. It was called Faff, The False Art of Feeling Fulfilled. Which is just it's a productivity performance setup, and the recent book that is out there is Mental Wealth, and that is about building that support network around you that's fit for purpose for the way forward. How to proactively invest in your well-being and support. MikePagan.com, or through LinkedIn is the other one. But if you do reach out on LinkedIn, please send me a little message saying how you heard about it, because that way I can recall and relate to, it's Susan and Nick who were giving me a hard time that time. I remember now.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been an incredible interview. And thank you, because I know how busy you are and you're just about to go to Australia and recharge your batteries, thinking about yourself as well. We will make sure that this is widely available in the International Men's Day, which is an important day for men and for those surrounding them, to make sure that men are safe and well. So thank you very much. This is the SuperStar Communicator podcast and live stream. Until next time, thank you from Mike, from Nick and myself. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. You have been listening to the SuperStar Communicator podcast with your hosts, Nick Simon and Susan Heaton-Wright. If you like what we do, why not buy us a coffee on buyusacoffee.com/superstarcoms and subscribe to hear all our podcasts.